The United States and China, two countries, two completely different economic machines. And together, they produce more than 40% of everything the world creates. For years, we've been told that China is catching America. That one day, the world's economic crown could move from Washington to Beijing. Depending on which number you look at, that day has either already happened, is still years away, or may never happen at all. So who's actually winning? Let's start with the scoreboard everyone knows, GDP. Measure both economies in ordinary American dollars, and America is still comfortably ahead. In 2026, the American economy is estimated at roughly $31.8 trillion, compared with around $20.6 trillion for China. On that scoreboard, there isn't much of a debate. America is roughly 1.5 times larger. Case closed? Not even close, because there's another scoreboard. And on that one, China has already won. It's called Purchasing Power Parity, or PPP. The name sounds complicated, but the idea is surprisingly simple. Imagine you have $10 in New York and $10 in a smaller Chinese city. Same amount of money. Very different amount of stuff. Rent, food, transportation, and everyday services often cost less in China. So economists adjust for those differences and ask a different question. Not how many dollars does an economy produce, but how much can that money actually buy? Do that, and the entire ranking flips. China passed the United States on a purchasing power basis back in 2014. Today, measured this way, China's economy is roughly 1.3 to 1.4 times the size of America's. Same two countries. Same year, two different winners. And we're only getting started. Because now divide all that economic power by the number of people who created it. Suddenly, China falls far behind. China has more than 1.4 billion people. America has roughly 340 million. Think of their economies as two enormous pizzas. China's pizza may look almost as large as America's in dollar terms, and even larger using purchasing power. But China has more than 4 times as many people waiting for a slice. That's where the difference becomes enormous. Economic output per person in the United States is around $84,500 a year. In China, it's roughly $12,600. That's nearly a 7-fold gap. Even after adjusting for purchasing power, the average American remains significantly wealthier. And this creates one of the biggest contradictions in the modern economy. Dominate global manufacturing and produce some of the world's most competitive electric vehicles. Yet average income and economic output per person remain far below American levels. Drive through Shanghai or Shenzhen, and parts of China can look every bit as futuristic as New York or Los Angeles. In some areas, even more so. But travel far enough into China's interior, and you encounter a completely different economic reality. That's the problem with averages. They can hide two worlds inside the same country. But income isn't the only thing separating these two giants. They became powerful by playing almost opposite games. America's economic machine begins with one thing Americans are extremely good at: spending money. Hundreds of millions of consumers buy homes, cars, subscriptions, restaurant meals, insurance, entertainment, software, and almost everything imaginable. Around that enormous consumer market sits another machine: finance and technology. Apple doesn't need to manufacture every component inside an iPhone to create enormous value. Microsoft can sell software around the world without building a new factory for every customer. Banks can move billions of dollars without a single shipping container leaving a port. Some of America's most powerful companies make money from ideas, software, brands, intellectual property, and global networks. China built something very different. It built the factory floor. Look around your home, your television, your charger, your desk lamp, your children's toys, your kitchen appliances, the components inside your laptop. There's a good chance that at least some of them were made in China, assembled in China, or passed through a Chinese supply chain. For decades, China built ports, highways, power plants, industrial parks, and factories at a speed the world had rarely seen. Western companies wanted cheaper manufacturing. Both sides saw an opportunity, and the result was extraordinary. Go back to 1960, and China's economy was only a fraction of the size of America's. By the late 1980s, the gap was still enormous. Imagine looking at those numbers back then and predicting that China would one day challenge the United States for economic supremacy. Most people would have struggled to believe it. Then everything changed. Beginning in the late 1970s, China gradually opened its economy, welcomed foreign investment, expanded exports, and turned itself into the manufacturing center of the world. Factories multiplied. Exports exploded. Cities rose. Hundreds of millions of people experienced one of the most dramatic economic transformations in modern history. For years, China's economy regularly grew at extraordinary rates. And that's when an uncomfortable question started appearing in Washington. What happens if China doesn't stop? For years, the math seemed almost inevitable. China was growing much faster than America. Keep that going long enough, and eventually, the lines cross. But economies aren't spreadsheets. And China's incredible growth machine has started running into problems. The first is something no factory can manufacture. Young people? The enormous working-age population that powered China's rise is aging. Fewer young workers are entering the system, while more older citizens are leaving it. That matters because economic miracles become much harder when the workforce supporting them starts shrinking. Then there's productivity. It's one thing to grow quickly by building the first highway, the first factory, the first apartment tower, or by moving millions of workers from farms into cities. It's much harder to repeat that trick once much of the obvious infrastructure has already been built. China also faces problems in its property sector and growing trade restrictions from several major economies. Suddenly, the question isn't simply whether China can catch America. It's whether China can keep growing fast enough to close the remaining gap. China is still expected to grow faster than the United States in 2026, but that fact alone doesn't tell us who wins. A developing economy often grows faster because it has more room to catch up. A richer economy doesn't necessarily need spectacular growth rates to remain incredibly powerful. And America has another advantage, one you can't see by looking at factories, highways, or GDP charts: the dollar. Imagine a company in Brazil buying oil, a European investor purchasing an international asset, a central bank deciding where to hold its reserves. Again and again, the dollar appears. The American dollar remains at the center of global finance and is still the world's dominant reserve currency. That gives America something China has struggled to replicate: not just wealth, financial influence. China has a weapon of its own: scale, especially manufacturing scale. And nowhere is that more obvious than in some of the industries that could define the next 20 years. Electric vehicles, batteries, solar panels, renewable energy equipment. China isn't simply competing in these industries. In several of them, it has built production capacity on a scale that competitors are struggling to match. So once again, the scoreboard changes. America dominates global finance. China dominates huge parts of global manufacturing. America has the richer average consumer. China has the larger population. China has enormous industrial capacity. America creates some of the world's most valuable technology companies. China can manufacture enormous quantities of physical technology at extraordinary speed. And that's why asking, who is winning becomes so difficult. But perhaps the strangest part of this rivalry is that neither side can simply walk away. Imagine walking into a Walmart somewhere in America. Look at the shelves: electronics, toys, clothing, kitchen equipment, household goods. Many of those supply chains lead back to China. Now imagine a factory thousands of miles away in China. Machines are running. Workers are assembling products. Shipping containers are waiting outside. Those factories need customers. And for decades, one of the most valuable groups of customers on Earth has been Americans. The two countries may compete strategically, impose tariffs, restrict certain technologies, and try to reduce dependence on each other in sensitive industries. But decades of trade have connected their economies in ways that are extremely difficult and expensive to unwind. Put tariffs on Chinese products, and Chinese exporters feel the pressure. But American importers and consumers can feel higher costs too. Restrict Chinese companies from accessing advanced American technology, and China faces a serious challenge. But American companies can also lose access to one of the largest markets on Earth. It's less like two boxers standing on opposite sides of a ring and more like two boxers whose shoelaces have somehow been tied together. Every punch risks pulling both of them off balance. And that brings us back to the original question. Which economy is actually bigger? If you're asking which economy is worth more when converted into dollars, America. If you're asking which produces more after adjusting for what money can actually buy, China. If you're asking where economic output per person is higher, America by a huge margin. If you're asking which country has the larger manufacturing machine, China. If you're asking which country controls the more powerful global currency, America. And if you're asking which one can afford for the other economy to simply disappear, neither. Maybe that's what makes this rivalry so different from the economic battles that came before it. America and China aren't simply competing for first place. They're competing while buying from each other, selling to each other, restricting each other, and trying to become less dependent on each other, all at the same time. One built the world's most powerful financial and consumer economy. The other built the world's most formidable manufacturing machine. And after one of the fastest economic transformations in history, but close enough isn't the same as winning. And winning itself depends entirely on which scoreboard you're looking at. Because the world's two greatest economic rivals aren't standing on opposite sides of the battlefield. They're standing inside the same machine.